Please sit, please sit. It's very encouraging to see a full house on a weekday evening. We were really scared because it's, Bakrid tomorrow. We thought people will go away on a really long weekend. But it's very encouraging to see a full house throughout the session, and thank you all very much for making it to the Money Control Policy Next Summit. No discussion these days is complete without technology and its impact on companies. And it's going to be the same with MSMEs as well. We heard the Union Minister Narayan Rane talk about how the aim is that MSMEs will comprise 50% of the economy in 5 years, from 40% now. So, Mr. Agarwal, if I can start with you, IndiaMART is almost synonymous with the MSME story in terms of how you've powered micro, small and medium enterprises in India. What are the key focus areas for MSMEs in the coming 2-3 years, as we see more digitization happening? I think I saw an IMAI data point recently which said India's internet users, are going to rise to 900 million by 2025 from 750 to 770 million now.
See, obviously, this mobile phone and internet adoption helps the entire population to become digital. Whether it is communicating with family members, whether it is sharing photos, or whether it is making payments, day-to-day payments. Nowadays, technology is not such a big taboo, because everybody has used technology during the lockdown, either because of the Zoom, because of the mobile phone, and most of the newer generation over the last 10 years is very comfortable with technology. So I think with this 500, 600 million to 900 million jump that we are going to see is going to expand the buyer base dramatically, because currently the MSMEs who are looking for technology for marketing of their products, finding newer markets, finding newer buyers. I think that is going to increase multifold. Also, the newer people who are coming onto the technology platforms, whether it is mobile phone or whether it is IndiaMART or Meesho or Tally, most of these people are highly comfortable in doing digital transactions. Every day we are using UPI in our day-to-day things, and more this is going to become easier for MSMEs also. So the first adoption for any technology comes as either at the enterprise level or at the consumer level, and the second adoption happens at the micro and small and medium businesses. So we believe that as these small and medium businesses will start to adopt to digitizing their products, whether ONDC ke through or whether IndiaMART, and also adopt to a CRM kind of a thing, because most of these people have been managing their relationships either in the Excel or in the register, and nowadays on WhatsApp, is not a very best use of the technology. I think there are simple CRMs available which are available off the shelf free of cost, or integrated with the solutions like IndiaMART or within Meesho itself. Similarly, the payment systems, people are very comfortable now. Over the last 3-4 years with the advent of UPI, they have become very, very comfortable. One of the things that people feel is, how do I use this technology to get better credit? How do I use this technology to bridge the trust gap that is there? Because when you are talking to a newer buyer or a newer seller, there is always this trust gap.
Since you mentioned credit, how important is the account aggregator framework going to be? Because that will help, MSMEs, or for that matter, any enterprise, get, cash flow based lending, cash flow based credit. So what kind of a game changer is that going to be for MSMEs?
I'm very hopeful because over the last 3-4 years, it has been ironed out. Now there are many partners, banking partners, financial information users, financial information providers, and recently I think GST has also been recognized as the financial information provider. So I am very hopeful that account aggregator and on top of that OCEN should help at least the smaller loan amounts.
Got it. Got it.
I'm very hopeful.
Nupur, Tally through its accounting solutions, software, has literally been a backbone for many enterprises in India. So how are you seeing, the changing needs, changing demands with respect to technology adoption, with respect to how they are seeing digitization in their businesses? What changes in behavior have you witnessed?
That's a great question. So my experience inside Tally and the way I think about the future is actually super optimistic, because when I have interacted with the small and medium sector, it's one of the few countries where I've seen such a willingness and openness to adopt technology, to experiment, and that's what gives me the view that it is one of the very few markets in the world that is not a demand constraint market, it is a supply constraint market. And I think that is a fascinating thing to work with. That's the general behavior that I've seen. And I think it allows us, people like us as software providers, software manufacturers, to actually do so much more, to be able to approach MSMEs with different categories of software, different types of technology, and actually be able to sit with them to get the kind of feedback to be able to create even more delightful products. I think there are very few markets, like I said, where you're able to have that type of openness, and that is one key behavior. It's not really a change, but I think it's one key foundational behavior that drives the change when it comes to adoption of any kind.
So the openness to...
Absolutely.
Got it. Dinesh, Mr. Agarwal spoke about, how the demand for tech is going up, and how he's hopeful about things like account aggregator and OCEN. If you can tell us about how MSMEs can deal with challenges around digital marketing, how can they leverage e-commerce and digital platforms as micro-entrepreneurs?
Sure. I think, when I look back for the last 2 years or 3 years since the pandemic started, there was a step change in openness from MSME entrepreneurs to actually adopt online in a big way. I think one of the hypotheses back in the day, 3 years ago, or maybe even before that, to what even Nupur mentioned, like the openness that MSMEs have to adopt digital tools is fairly high. So for example, one of the tools that we offer to our sellers on the platform is a digital marketing tool, where small businesses can do ads on the platform very much akin to what they will be able to, let's say large corporations will be able to do on a Facebook, Google, multiple other places.
But what about the cost of those ads?
Which are lower than, let's say, if they would be doing it on larger platforms. Plus, if a seller is doing an ad, for instance, on a platform where the user intent is to shop, then that converts much better.
The conversion ratio is
into an actual sale. So what we've seen is people are tremendously open to adopting these new things. I think the next generation, the youth that's kind of coming up and taking over some of these businesses are very, very open to adopt new technologies. And I think it sort of behooves us to solve for them and to create those tools which are intuitive, but at the same time offer the complexity of how to deal with selling online.
Got it. Mr. Sood, you represent the industry here. I mean, you heard from two big e-commerce platforms, you heard from a solutions provider, software provider. What has your own experience been as MSMEs? Do you concur with these points? What are the challenges, as we enter the Techade?
Thank you for inviting me. As you said, I represent the manufacturing sector, and specifically the micro and small sector. See, and as a manufacturer myself, you have to see, when you are, driving a car, what lets you drive a car faster? It is the brake, which allows you the ability to drive faster. So what I feel is that a lot of MSMEs are, now going on digital platforms, but there are not enough, the level of confidence needs to be increased. For example, I know in my, my member circle that people are having, for digital transactions, they are keeping 2 accounts. They would, transfer from one account to another account and do only that portion which they know that, they are going to use. So they're afraid that their money might be lost. So the environment has to be created. And another thing is, digitalization and all these things are very good. But we must realize that at the end of the day, a micro enterprise entrepreneur is a PN to proprietor in his factory. He has to manage multiple things, and he has to do multitasking. So it is not always possible, to get educated or get a feedback online. So what we always propagate is that there should be an association and, the institution, whatever institution that is, a collaborative effort where they can collaborate and they can physically come and we can hold sessions and educate our people. Because at the moment what we feel, for example, I'll talk about Amazon. So if you want to go to Amazon platform and if you're having a problem, you can have n number of help online. But what I feel is that the MSME needs is hand holding. The second aspect I want to highlight here is, of course, it is not exactly a part of this discussion, but it has been covered in the earlier discussion, is that our younger generation is not coming to join MSMEs. I am referring to the brick and mortar MSMEs. Right. And whenever we have discussion among ourselves, I'll tell you my own example. When my children were in formative years, my wife asked me, would you like your son or daughter? I have 2 daughters, by the way. So would you like your daughters to be running your factory? The instant answer was no. So not only we, but they also don't want to come. And in the age of startups, we must not forget, and the online businesses, all that, we must not forget the importance of brick and mortar factories.
A round of applause for that. Yeah.
So you can do everything online, but at the end of the day, what you trade online or deal online has to be manufactured somewhere. So everybody is now, focusing on, digitalization and, online marketing, all, but we should not lose focus on the basic.
Got it. I have a 2-part question, so maybe I'll address one to Dhiresh and one here. Dhiresh, the first part of it, it's about trust. He mentioned how some entrepreneurs use 2 accounts because they are scared of losing money or, whether there is enough trust in the system. So what steps should the ecosystem take to build trust among small business owners, given, they fear frauds and what can happen online? Is enough effort going into that?
Yeah, no, I think it's an important barrier to entry when people think about, starting to do business online, or even just starting to do business altogether, right? We heard about the cost of compliance that it takes. Equally on the online side, let's say it's still new for a lot of people, so they fear the unknown. I think some of the steps that platform like ours are taking are twofold, right? One, there are clusters of suppliers in various locations which are forming communities of their own, and it could be through an association, or it could be through informal networks that they are also developing, where, for instance, in a place like Jaipur or Surat or Delhi, even smaller places, Panipat, etc., people form these informal communities where they almost teach each other and are able to kind of impart knowledge. I think there is probably a need to formalize some of those structures to make sure that people are not just getting educated through online knowledge management systems, but also kind of able to form an opinion. The second part is, partnerships with various industry bodies, government bodies, etc., where, for instance, we have been running this program around educating very, offline-focused businesses to on the house of how to start business online. What are the things that you will face if, you are online versus you were offline. So a market like Tirupur, for instance, where traditionally everyone has been very offline-focused. How do you break that mental barrier that, look, online is here and it's here to stay, and you have to kind of start trusting? The third is around just making sure that their problems, challenges are being addressed properly, and I think that will go a long way in sort of developing trust on the platforms.
Got it. Mr. Agarwal, I don't know if you have the answer to this, but the second part of what Mrs. Sood said, which is the children of MSME owners do not want to run these factories anymore. They perhaps want to join startups like Meesho or IndiaMART or Tally. How do you make MSMEs more aspirational? How do you make them more attractive?
Yes, there are few cases like that. So there are two kind of set of people. One who hate their own family business, and one who love their family business. My children is going to take over this, and
I think
like,
Nupur belongs. We know which category she belongs.
So there are both sides of it, and over a period, these things will settle down. I don't think. Yes, brick and mortar is very important. Hand holding is very important. So at IndiaMART, we just don't do an online support. We provide on the field internet consultant who comes and visit you and help you, because otherwise you might be able to fulfill the buyer side of demand with 10,000 suppliers, but if you want to enable 10 million suppliers, I think this point is very valid, that MSMEs need hand holding. Tally has done such a super job with the Tally Education Partners through the Tally Education Partners. So I think that part is very, very valid. In terms of trust, there are various mechanisms like, ratings and reviews are being done. OTP-based verification is being done. One of the things that I've been waiting from go ahead from the government, because yes, Aadhaar-based authentication leads to a privacy issue, but I think a PAN-based authentication, if that can be given, that can lead to at least the seller side verification very good, because PAN or GST, because GST, PAN is based, GST is based upon PAN. So because currently there is no way to bridge the impersonation gap. So you can have a phone number OTP verified, email OTP verified, but the GST number or the PAN number is separate, So just like Jandan Aadhaar mobile, now that the PANs are connected with the Aadhaar and all that, if a PAN-based verification mechanism can be given, PAN to mobile, I think that can solve a lot of trust issues on the marketplaces.
Got it. Nupur, Mr. Agarwal mentioned, in terms of educating and hand-holding MSMEs, how it's not just online, but also offline. So, what can platforms, what can, product providers, software providers do to surmount some immediate challenges in terms of digital literacy, warehousing, inventory management, cash flow concerns?
So I would actually go back to
once they are onboarded.
Right. So I would actually go back to the first point about access. So if I think about Tally, I think one of our biggest strengths is actually our partner network across India. And this for us means that across almost 95% of India, our customers and small businesses don't have just a website in front of them, they have a face in front of them. And I think, in my view, for this sector, I think that is one of the keys. I don't see it personally over the next few months or years moving into pure digital yet. And I think this is not just about access to technology, but some of the other points that you made. I think it is about access to information, access to support. When someone is in front of you having a cup of chai and helping you with onboarding, data migration, support issues, etc. I think that is a very, very big unlocking factor. I did want to make a point about the digital literacy, though, because I have just a view about it. What I find fascinating actually is not, I think it is slightly easier to think about the problem as an education problem of giving somebody a software product or giving somebody technology and trying to solve it through education. But what I find fascinating, and the problem I think I've fallen a little bit in love with, is how do you think about creating technology without the prerequisite of digital literacy?
Something which is more intuitive, right?
Yeah, intuitive is one way to put it. So one of the first Tally customers that I ever met while I was in college actually, he had bought a computer just to use Tally. And he actually had no idea how to operate the computer, which I found super interesting. So the only thing the partner had taught him was how to switch on the computer, how to open Tally, and then he'd run his business. And by the end of the day, save, exit Tally, switch off the computer. Literally did not use the computer for anything else. And I don't know if the word intuitive would capture that feeling. And I think that for technologists is just a very, very difficult but very interesting problem to solve.
Right, right. That's an interesting point. Dhiresh, the other thing that I wanted to understand, how can e-commerce platforms really help MSMEs in terms of expanding support to local, regional brands? How do you make it a level playing field?
Yeah, I think that's the key challenge that's going to be there in the next, let's say, decade or so. How do we make sure that while organization of commerce is happening, it's not getting concentrated into just a few pockets.
It doesn't become an oligopoly of sorts.
So I think there are a few things which MSMEs do really well, right? One is they have a lot of appetite to innovate and bring in new sort of products, technologies. So for example, in e-commerce, what we see is whenever there is a new trend that's catching on, typically the MSMEs, the fashion MSMEs, for instance, are the ones which are first to get on that trend quickly and be able to produce, maybe not in very large quantities, but in smaller quantities. So they bring a lot of variety or assortment.
Give us an example of it.
Example could be, let's say there is some new trend, some actress has worn something that is trending, the whole, let's say, fast fashion thing that has happened, be it in China, and the same is kind of being replicated across in India. They have the advantage of speed. So they can move quickly, change their systems and processes, which, let's say, a large-scale organization might not be able to do. So the agility that they bring is quite important. The ability to operate with lower overheads is the second important thing that they're able to kind of deliver on. So I think the next sort of challenge in online will be to kind of build on these strengths and be able to actually use that to compete with, let's say, some of the larger players and brands, etc.
Got it. Ms. Sood, from a regulatory perspective, compliance perspective, what more needs to be done in terms of the compliance requirements or, the policies currently?
Well, that's a very good question, but not an easy one to answer because...
Are there so many issues that it's not easy to answer?
Actually, there are so many that I can't even begin to answer it because, you see, from the beginning of your operations till the end, there are so many compliances that, the MSME is fed up. I told you why the next generation doesn't want. The reason is that children grow up and see their mothers and fathers who are managing their business. If you are a salaried person, whether you are in private or you are in government, once you come home, you are home. But when you are running an enterprise and a manufacturing one at that, you are never, offline or you are never off duty. You are 24/7, you are always there. There is a, saying in our circle, the customer says, how are you, pulta hai na wo? So he'll say, Mr. Sood, acha. I'll say, I'm in hospital. So he'll say, please deliver my goods before dying. So the life is so tough. And actually, we have written from our association to the Prime Minister of India. I don't know if it ever got to him. You know, they had started a scheme of lateral infusion from the industry. So I said, let's have it other way around. Why don't you send your secretaries and, you know, additional secretaries, deputy secretaries to the MSMEs? Let them spend a day or two with us. Let them see how the factories run. And we offered them that our Badli Industrial Estate, which incidentally is India's cleanest industrial estate. We were awarded by the Ministry of MSME as India's cleanest industrial estate. I said, we offer you that let us make our industrial estate as your laboratory. You put your scheme to test, send your people here, and let them face the music. Because you see, when the policy makers you have so many kinds of reports coming, they sit in their air-conditioned room and come out with a report. So, which is, they are not, you know, connected with the reality. So, what I want to say is that there is an immense possibility. It is very heartening to see that our Prime Minister say that he is, you know, people, you know, governments used to make laws, he is now undoing the created laws. But such a lot of things have to be done that it is really, you know, one finds himself or herself in a hopeless situation. You take it any aspect, whether it is labor laws, other laws, there are so many compliances that at the end of the day, you say कि भाई मेरा काम करवा दो, जो आपकी दक्षिणा है वो हम दे देंगे, आप हमारा काम कर दीजिए. That is the slogan. तो वो चीज जब तक हम नहीं उसको एड्रेस करेंगे, we have to, you know, start from scratch. We have to, you know, जैसे Control Alt Del होता है कंप्यूटर में, ये जो laws concerning the MSMEs, we have to do that and start afresh.
Control Del. Okay. Mr. Agarwal, you know, one other game changer that many people are talking about is the ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce. Do you think that could be a game changer for small sellers in India, and how?
I would certainly hope that it becomes as useful as UPI is. You know, but before that, I think OCEN has a lot more in pipeline, because it's a purely digital information-only platform. On the ONDC, the complexity goes further, because there are delivery of the goods and things like those involved. I think the first adoption of the ONDC would happen on the purely digital nature of transactions, whether it is ticketing or whether it is hotel booking or whether it is cab booking or you know, food delivery, which has been sorted. But once it catches on, I think it can be very powerful, because obviously a public digital infrastructure which reduces the cost for everybody. So in general, on a theory, it looks all good. UPI has proven this, that it can be done on a scale,
Population scale,
and at a population, at every village and every sabji wala and every online store or every large superstore. So I think ONDC and OCEN, I would rather believe that the account aggregator and OCEN, where there is a digital transfer, you know, interchange of data, digital interchange of document, that is far more easier and can have a bigger impact. And then followed by ONDC. ONDC again for digital goods, then physical goods, then B2B, then many other things.
Got it. Nupur, you know, another trend that we saw, at least during the pandemic, was a lot of MSME focused SaaS startups, and you know, there were very fancy catchwords like Dukaan Tech and Kirana Tech, which actually attracted a huge amount of capital. But you know, they seem to have lost steam. It's not that hot anymore. So why do you think that is, and you know, what software do MSMEs need really at the end of the day?
So that's a slightly broad question, but let me try to answer it in this way. I think when it comes to the MSME sector, and everyone in this room knows the sheer diversity that is there in the sector, I think the approach to creating technology is really about creating the right technology for the MSME, meaning that they should not require to change the way they run their business in order to adopt your technology. It should be the other way around. And I think a lot of companies and a lot of startups did miss that, despite the initial run that we perceived, which meant that there were so many products in the market which were demoable but were not really usable. So once you were in front of a business owner, the product was fantastic, but once you exit the door and the owner starts running the business and they start using the product, that's when issues started surfacing. And again, it goes back to the access, potentially lack of support, that starts creeping in. And the second something becomes more of a friction rather than a lubrication to your business, you will reject it. So I think it was more, I see it more as the approach you use in order to design and develop technology.
Got it. Got it. We are running out of time, so I'm just going to ask each of you. We're calling the session MSMEs and the Techade. So one big prediction or trend that you foresee this decade or Techade. I think I'll start with Mr. Sood.
Well, I see a great future there, and I see that the entire spectrum of MSMEs will go a sea change, both in their working and in their outlook, in another decade or so. And there is a need to simplify things and, make security higher, as I've already said. And well, the next decade is for technology, and MSME has everything to gain from it.
Dhiresh?
So I think, in our view, maybe about 2 million of the 64 million MSMEs today, work online. Our expectation is that number starts reaching almost 70–80% of the entire, base of MSMEs, and the base itself should grow. And a lot will go into that. It will mean simpler technologies for people to use. It will mean credit which should be available on tap versus kind of really making an effort to do that. So that's our expectation and hope.
Okay. Nupur?
I would actually make 2 points. One is off of the point Amit made in the previous panel, that today, even if you have an SME that is digitized in various aspects of their business, the business data is still isolated. They're still islands. And I think if we can see how connectivity for business data as opposed to individuals can be transformed, I think the way businesses transact with each other can completely change. And I think the second thing I would say is actually for software providers. I think we'll see a huge push and a huge rush, at least I'm hopeful for it, of the war cry of made in India and made for the world.
Mr. Agarwal?
See, I see technology eliminating many roadblocks. You asked about the level playing field. The earlier non-digital media, whether it is newspaper or whether it is television, or they always favored big people. MSMEs could not really afford those media. Because of the digital media, platforms like Meesho, platforms like IndiaMART, platforms like Google, MSMEs can now side by side work and create a very level playing advertising and marketing field. Similarly, on the red tapeism, whatever red tape is, half of the red tape is, or even more than half, is because of the human interface, not because of the laws. People don't have too much problem of the law. The interpretation of the law is far more problematic. And we have seen how income tax digitization has eased it out to a great extent.
Correct.
Now, similarly, GST has eased it out to a great extent, because you no longer have to go to a tax office every year or every month or every quarter and file there and take an acknowledgement from there. You can file digitally, digital acknowledgement comes, digital sunwai is there. So I think the more digital adoption happens at the government level,
lesser red tape
the red tape will go down dramatically, and the government is very taking huge advantage of this whole Aadhaar and GST and all that data. Most of your data, the connectivity issues are already getting solved. If you go to an income tax officer or a tax officer, He already has more data about your business than you yourself have. So all the data is now available. Your income tax return is all pre-filled. GST return is also going to be pre-filled quite a bit with the e-invoicing and all that. So now with the technology, I think MSMEs would have a lot of level playing field, would have less red tapeism to face, and would have better, cheaper software available, because as Sam Altman and Elon Musk and everybody is predicting that with this whole AI and with this whole thing, the cost of software is going to go down dramatically. At least the usage-based, rent-based software is going to go down dramatically. So I am very hopeful that next whole decade or this whole century is going to be a decathlon or Techa century.
Okay. On that positive note, thank you all very much for joining us on the panel. Thank you all. Thank you.